Hello, everybody. Welcome to the deck. I am Bart Robley, and I'm here with three of my great friends in Tucson, Arizona. Chip Ritter, the,
Hello.
the
Yep.
gunslinger, Jeremy
Yeah.
Steinkohler up in the Bay Area, and the man, the myth, the legend, the dead ringer, Rick Stojak down in San
Hey.
Diego. How is
Welcome,
everybody
everyone.
doing today? We
Good.
had you guys doing okay? How's everybody?
We're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Are you good?
I'm good.
Perfect.
I'm good. I'm back from, like I said before I got online. If COVID's going to kill me, it's going to have to get meaner than this, man. It was no fun though. It was no fun. But anyway, hey, so yeah, we kind of were like spitballing ideas on what today's show should be, and what should we talk about? And I had brought this up a few months ago, and we talked about it. Imposter syndrome, and I think it's something that it's a lot of people that are artists at first, I thought, suffered from imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome. Gosh, somebody's going to figure me out here pretty soon. But as I researched it a little bit, it's not just artists. I think it's all walks of life. Albert Einstein called himself an involuntary swindler. He said that his stuff, that his work did not deserve as much recognition as it got. There's a lot of authors who write many books, and they win a lot of prestigious awards, and they just don't feel like they deserve it. They feel like they're an imposter, and they're going to be found out at any second. And I think that musicians are the same way. I think it's really easy, especially when you're in the music business. A lot of people, when you're first getting into it, think it's this big business, and it's never going to get in. But once you get in it, not very big. Everybody knows each other, and you kind of have that. A lot of times you have that little nagging feeling in the back of your head, oh, I'm going to be found out any minute that I don't know what I'm doing. And I think it's something a lot of people suffer from. So I think it's a great topic. I think it's something to talk about, and not only what it is, but if anybody out there suffers from it, throw us your ideas. We'll give you our ideas, and how maybe we have run into it and how to deal with it. So as we said before we went on, here's the real Bart. So anyway, Jeremy, give me your thoughts on that imposter syndrome. What do you think that is, and have you ever run into it? Have you ever felt that way?
Well, the first thing I'll say is, we don't really know what we're talking about. We're just pretending to be
at all.
Yeah, we're not therapists.
I don't have anything to do on Tuesday morning.
I was just making a joke,
so.
you guys. Like we're being imposters talking about imposter syndrome. Forget it. Never mind. Actually, you know what? In all seriousness, I think this could possibly be one of the most important episodes or topics that we ever discuss. I really do, because self-doubt is something that plagues. I mean, every musician that I've ever met has dealt with some degree of it or battled with it at different points in their career. My students deal with it all the time. We talk about it a lot during lessons. I've dealt with it as a professional. Ringo had a very well-documented episode of self-doubt, where he was just feeling like he wasn't bringing it. I think it's really easy to look outward and compare yourself. That's sort of our first instinct, right? Is to think about how we stack up against everybody else. And of course, now with, YouTube and social media, you can, watching a 5-year-old shred, good times, bad times, or the black page is just a click away nowadays.
Right.
And, it's really easy to walk away from watching all that stuff and just feel depressed. Like, oh, I'm not that. I'm never going to be that. There's no way I could possibly do that. Or, no matter where you are at, in your playing. So like as a professional, you might see a 5-year-old shredding this stuff and you're like, man, it took me till I was 45 to be able to do that. Or I still can't do that, or as a student, you might see that and like, oh man, why bother? Right. So it's easy to sort of feel defeated by thinking about, when you look at all the other people who are playing so great and, you're not at that level. But, and this is the big but, that's not what this is about. You don't get any medals. You don't win first place for being a good drummer.
Right.
What the path that we're on, the path that every artist is on, is one of self-discovery and self-expression. and becoming, as we talked about this on the show in the past, the sort of best version of yourself that you can be, right? So Bart and I, we play drums very differently. Chip and I play drums very differently. Rick and I, we all four of us play drums very differently. We have different sound. We have a different voice. We play different styles of music. But even when we overlap, if you sit all four of us down to play the same groove with the same song, with the same band, we're not going to sound exactly the same.
Right.
But we're all going to bring really great qualities to our playing because we're seasoned professionals, right? But I'm going to sound like me. Bart's going to sound like Bart, and Rick and Chip and so on. And that's kind of the thing to remember is you're not trying to be anybody else. You're just trying to be the best version of yourself with your most authentic or true to yourself voice on the drums, feel, the way that you play. And, music is as an art form is infinite, right? I mean, there's infinite possibilities for collaboration and expression and composition and delivery. And so it's not really about, being the fastest or being the best or being any sort of superlative thing. You're just trying to be musical and tasteful and the best version of yourself that you can be.
Yes.
And when you put it in that context, when you look at it through that lens, it's a little easier to be like, okay, well, you start focusing on the things that you can control instead of the things that you can't. And the things that you can control are how hard you work, how prepared you are. That's a theme that's come up when we've talked to all these drummers in the past, being prepared. And then it's all about what you can do for yourself as a player, and not about comparing yourself to others or, because you're never going to hold up. You're never going to hold up if you compare yourself to the best.
Right.
That's right.
Very well said. Very
Jeremy,
well said.
you should write a book. Oh, wait, you did.
Yeah.
Finding the groove.
Well,
Finding the groove.
I want to say one more thing before I kick it off to Rick and Chip. I think it's really, really easy. In one of the chapters in my book, I talk about it's called the path of least resistance. And normally we think of that as a good thing, always go for the path of least resistance, right? Less obstacle, less trouble. But sometimes the path of least resistance is one that takes us to a bad place, right? Because we're so used to self-doubt or being critical of ourselves, or, oh, I suck, or I'm never good enough. And that's sort of the reflexive place we go to. Like the path of least resistance is after every show, what did I do wrong? How did I not, live up to my own expectations or the band's expectations? And, that's not a good thing. You gotta catch that and sort of shift your paradigm if you want to endure, honestly, because it can be debilitating.
Right.
It really can.
Right.
It really can.
Chip, what are your thoughts about imposter syndrome?
Well, I think a lot about this. I thought a lot about it since I knew we were going to be doing it. And the thing that comes to my mind is doing drum clinics. I went through every clinic I've ever done. I've gone through this imposter syndrome fear that I'm going to get up there and they're going to discover the truth, which is that I know absolutely nothing about this craft. I don't know what I'm doing or how I learned how to play, and even in spite of all the technology we've been anointed with.
There it is.
Yet to come across the top and ever have that feeling of completely belonging in this world, it goes back to what you said. I think you have to deal with to deal with overcoming imposter syndrome, you have to look at the core causes and conditions and get down to the facts and get honest in your gut about what the truth is.
Yeah.
And the truth is it really does come from comparing. It comes from that looking outward and judging yourself by other people's outsides, judging your insides. Yeah. And I don't know, the solutions are like, I can't top what Jeremy was talking about, where you're celebrating the differences of what it is that you bring to the table, and enhancing the things that you can do. So I feel like I'm a fraud before this clinic. What can I do about it? Well, I can be very prepared on my clinic. I can be very prepared on my notes. I can stick to my lane. I can stay in my sandbox and do the best I can do with what I have to work with. And that's the solution for imposter syndrome for me. What do you think, Rick?
That's really good, Chip.
Very well said, Chip. Very well said.
Man, it's a real thing. We do know that. Even sadly, in John Bonham's final days, he was ready to give it up. He wasn't happy with his drumming, if you can believe that. I think we all go through that. And I will definitely reiterate, try to not compare yourself. Especially as you said, Jeremy, with Instagram. Don't do it. It's just not. I just find that it really affects a lot of my students, and just watching some of these drummers rip. It just can be mind-boggling, and I'm happy for them, but I don't know that it's a good idea to watch it constantly, and it will definitely beat you down. There's no doubt about that. So, and then please, family and friends and students, stop sending videos of kids playing. I don't want to see your followers. No, seriously, it's wonderful how much young talent we have, but if you find inspiration from all of this stuff, absolutely, that's great. And of course, we want to watch drummers and get inspired, and so I definitely encourage that. But if you find at all that it's affecting you in a negative way or beating you down, then just enjoy your own playing. And I think realizing that everyone plays different is so vital. And I think it comes down to, like, let's say you're doing an audition and you heard the way other players play. It would be a massive mistake for you to try to play like them. You just have to be you and play your part and just be comfortable with yourself. Because if you're not comfortable with yourself, then people are going to be affected by it. And you're just not going to play to your best of your abilities. So it's just all up in the head. And so I think basically, I think, solutions, Chip, you're like, well, what are the solutions to all of this? And I think it's the mindset. I think that positive thoughts create positive results, and negative thoughts create negative results.
Yes.
And the more that we have, we are all like cave people. We wake up in the morning and we're like, what can I fix? What's wrong? There's 1,000 things going right, and we're focused on the one or two little things.
Yep.
Right.
You could have made $100,000 in a year teaching drums, and you might wake up and go, oh man, my paradiddles aren't fast enough, and you're focused on that. I mean, I know we can use some of this for growth. Cool. If it's healthy growth, cool. But as you start getting all of these different thoughts that are negative, they start turning into a belief, and the beliefs are so ingrained.
That's
your subconscious doesn't know the difference,
No, it doesn't.
Rick, you said some really important things there, and I just want to add to that. You are what you eat,
Right.
and if you keep thinking these kinds of thoughts, I'm not good enough, I'm lacking, I'm not living up to my expectations, blah blah blah, that's what it's going to become true, right? That's what becomes true, because you're thinking it all the time. And it doesn't make you play better. If anything, it makes you play worse. Right. Because you're tripping. You're in your analytical editing brain, the self-conscious brain that's hating yourself while you're playing all the whole time. You're not in the music, you're not listening.
Right.
Because you've got those thoughts running through your head that are just beating yourself up. And then what do you have to show for it at the end of the gig? More of the same.
Yep.
Right. And you weren't even like in the moment listening to the music, because you were just thinking about all the things you were doing wrong or not good enough. Right. Oh man, I missed that fill, or I didn't, my timing wasn't exactly perfect. Oh man, that's the third mistake I've made during this set, Well, then at the end, what have you got? You've got, X number of mistakes, and you didn't enjoy playing, and you weren't really listening, and you weren't playing your best. So, playing music, it's art. It's supposed to be messy. It's not a zero mistake sum game. You want to get to that level, you got to work your butt off to get, and even then, Miles Davis, Herbie Hancock, what's his name? Who said it? Coleman Hawkins, great jazz tenor sax player, said, if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You're not stretching out enough. Right.
So, it's like, but back to the thing, what Rick was saying, if those are the thoughts you allow to keep happening, that becomes your reality. And this goes for anything. We're talking about drumming and music, but this just you could be an athlete, or you could be a visual artist or a dancer. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. Right. And you think about some of those. I was just thinking about Steph Curry, just because I'm a huge Warriors fan, and he's in a shooting slump right now. And there's someone was doing an interview with him, and he said, I know it's going to come back around. These guys do so much work on the mental game, because at that level, it's such a big part of how they perform.
Yeah.
And I think it's true, but I think it's true really at any level. You can, if you're playing golf, you amateur golfer hits a bad shot, it leads to a whole bunch of bad shots. Tiger Woods hits a bad shot, that's the end of it, and then he comes back and birdies the next hole, kind of thing. So you are what you eat. Yeah.
Right on. No doubt, man. You have to just question the negative beliefs. You have to try to take each one of them individually and just like poke a hole in it and ask yourself a question about that negative belief. Like, oh my God, I don't belong here. Well, question that. Do I not belong here? Well, hey, wait, I was invited.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Well, now it's not. Now I'm not as, now it's softened a little bit. And then, oh man, I'm not prepared. And then you could say, well, wait a second. I practiced this thing over and over and over. It's softened a little bit. Oh, maybe I am prepared. Oh my God, the guy who did the gig, the band before me, or maybe the clinician before me, ripped it to shreds. I'm not going to be able to rip it to shreds. I'm not going to be able to juggle like Chip Ritter. Oh God, they're going to like Chip better than me.
Right.
Well, they should, but
but everybody likes Chip better than you
entirely. Yeah.
but I have to start exactly. So, but you have to laugh at yourself too.
Yeah,
it is. You have to stop taking yourself so seriously. You have to laugh at it a little bit. And then you might say, well, maybe they're just looking for a different, this other band's drummer dazzled them in clinic or live performance. Well, maybe they didn't carry anything that they learned from that. Maybe they're looking for somebody who's going to educate them or inspire them and encourage them rather than threaten them with their killer playing. Or maybe the band, maybe there's an audition for the band that you're trying to get into because the previous drummer overplayed or was too fancy or did too many polyrhythms or rhythms that were irrelevant to the song, and they're just looking for the type of drummer that you are, whatever that may be.
Well, and yes, and how like when we listen to drummers, almost all the time, we're super we admire them, and we're positive and encouraging. We think good thoughts about everybody else, but we think negative thoughts about ourselves.
Thank you for that. Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And it comes back to that comparison that, I can't do that. I can't play like that. And it eats you alive, I think, at times. I remember when I first started doing clinics, and as all of us know, I mean, clinics are terrifying. You're playing drums in a room full of drummers, and I remember two things. One of them was with Dom Fimulero. I took a lesson with him. I was getting ready to do a clinic, and all of my endorsers were really running with a poster, and I was like, oh my gosh! For some reason, I had Weckl in my head for some reason, and I had this thing like, what if Dave Weckl shows up to my clinic? And I was freaking out on it. It was so inside my head, and so anyway, I took a lesson from Fimulero, and he put it so simple. He goes, well, what are you going to do? Out-drum Weckl? And I was like, whoa, no. And then I kind of started thinking about, and that's not even my subject matter. That's not what I'm talking about in my clinic. Why would I do that? And then about 2 weeks before that clinic, I went to the Hollywood Drum Show, and I saw my buddy Chip play. And Chip did just what I was saying. He got up in front of the Hollywood Drum Show, and this is one of the biggest shows in October every year. It was across from Capitol Records. Frankie Benelli was there. All these just months. I mean, every drummer in town is at the show, and there's Chip, and he warmed up. Chip warms up with Hot for Teacher, And I was like, holy crap. And that gave me so much, it gave me so much, it just made me brave because I was like, well, God, here's my buddy up there and he's just killing it. And I watched him do his clinic and he did his thing and it was very inspirational to me. And so when I went and I did my clinic, there were obviously a lot of drum students there, but a lot of my drummer buddies showed up and they were all very encouraging. And I just stayed, like Chip said, I stayed in my lane. I knew what my subject matter was. I knew what I was going to talk about and I was prepared because I prepared. And the clinic went well. And so again, clinics have helped me break that cycle of, I'm not as good as the next person. I do what I do and I'm living my journey. This is what it is that I do, that I convey to students. And it kind of helped me stop comparing myself to other people. I mean, I still think it's there from time to time, but I think it's in a healthier way.
No. Right.
That's got to be one of the keys. That's got to be one of the keys to a solution getting out of imposter syndrome starter pack. One of the first things is going to be stop comparing. You know what I mean? The other thing, like Rick was talking about, challenging the negative beliefs. I love that. Yeah. You know what I mean? When you have that thought or that fear that comes up, stop it in its tracks and challenge it. And I want to say hi to Ellie J and Kelly Ray Tubbs and David Betts and Peter Retzlaff that are watching.
Hey, friends.
Kelly Ray Tubbs
says, what's happening, guys?
Kelly says it helps to have someone's opinion, someone who has opinion you trust, helping to assure you of what you can do. I love that.
That's fantastic. Well, that's a good reminder, Kelly. I mean, that's kind of like what this episode is about, right? We're here assuring one another. We're here assuring the community, whoever's listening, that, you can do it. I mean, we're not being specific because we're not talking about individuals, but like having people, the trust is the important piece too. It's one, like, because sorry, I'm all over the place here, but I'm thinking about a lot of things. It's easy to just focus on the negative, and you may hear off, some comments from people or, Facebook haters or whatever that say something negative, but you don't know these people from Adam, right? And when you have someone whose opinion you trust, then there's something you can work with. So if I played something and I asked Bart's or Chip's, opinion, hey man, what do you think of that? I really want to know what they think. And if they had something that was critical, I'd really want to hear it because it'd be something I know I could work on because I trust their opinions. But if it's just coming from whoever, who knows what's motivating them, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you're always going to have haters. I mean, there's always going to be people out there that are going to, and that usually comes from envy, I think, and
insecurity.
If you're moving, dude, a dead dog doesn't get kicked. If you're moving and you're out there and you're shaking it up, there's going to be, I did a juggling video at NAMM that went viral. It had like 10 million views. And at the time I was on the Vic Firth roster, and Vic Firth posted that video on their Facebook. And I was sitting there thinking, at first I was like, wow, what an honor. That's so cool. And then I started looking at the comments and they were 95% negative, man. I'm telling you. And these are my peers. And it was just negative. And I struggled a lot with that. But I come to find out that means that you're doing something. That means that you're disrupting the norm. That means that you've got something original that's, that people are reacting to. So it's not always bad to have a negative comment on your video.
And I also think too, you mentioned videos, Chip. We've all talked about, social media. Rick was talking about Instagram. It's going to be way easier to be on this side of the screen and go, that's so dumb. Why are you spinning your sticks, Chip? Why are you juggling your sticks? Play whatever it is that they said, it doesn't matter. They if they could juggle their sticks and do a video, they'd do it too. I think that's, that's just, envy, and hey, one of the terms that we use in drumming all the time was something that Jeremy mentioned a little while ago, Ringo. Ringo went through a big, long bout of, man, I'm not a very good drummer, and he's comparing himself to other people. And the term backbeat came from that, because he was so insecure, and he went to the guys in the band, and John Lennon says, "Oh, what are you talking about? You're the king of the backbeat." Nobody knew what the hell the backbeat was until John Lennon said that. And what he meant was 2 and 4. He just nailed that 2 and 4. And to the best of my knowledge, that's where that term comes from. And I mean, that's, who's better at doing that than Ringo? And when you hear stories like that, like Ringo went through it, John Bonham went through it, all these guys, they'd always, they let it eat them up.
Miles Davis.
Miles Davis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's true about making art, and this applies to all different mediums, is you're putting yourself out there and you're making yourself vulnerable.
Yep.
And this really, I think on a human level, this kind of comes down to vulnerability.
Uh-huh.
And when you put yourself out there by making something artistic, putting a video of yourself up on playing drums or playing a show, whatever it is, you're opening yourself up for people to look and judge. Right. And of course you're already judging plenty on your own. And that's a pretty awesome thing to do. When we see our students getting on stage for the first time, or they're playing a drum recital, or they're playing their first band, we're just like, yes, that's awesome. We love it. We're so encouraging. We're so supportive. It doesn't matter how they play.
Right.
And that's not even the point. I mean, they may shred it or they may struggle, but it's the first step on a journey of like finding their voice and self-expression and fulfillment with the music, with art.
Right.
And
because go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
Well, there's no greatest drummer. There's no great artist out there, right? Monet better than Rembrandt, than some pop art individual. It's art. We're all humans. Which bird is prettier? Which dog is the better dog in the dog show? I mean, it's
right.
It's so subjective. So there is no greatest drummer. And
it's like we've all heard this
drummer either, right? If you think there's no greatest drummer, then there's no worst drummer, then there's no medium drummer, then the lines are all blurred. It's just
we've all had this question. I know you guys have had this question from friends of yours when they find out you're a drummer, and they say, "Okay, who's a better drummer, Neil Peart or John Bonham?"
Right.
I mean, we've all 4 of us have been asked that.
Right.
Well, I don't know what's better, red or blue. I mean, come on. Yeah, exactly.
I went to do you guys know we've talked about this guy in the past on the show, Kenny Werner? He wrote the book.
Effortless
Mastery.
Yeah,
he's a really hot New York jazz piano player from New York. And I went to a clinic he gave one time out here, and he asked a question. He was like, because he was talking about the same idea about self-doubt and how people can just get completely in their heads. And he said, what happens if I make a mistake when I'm playing? He was asking the question for people to answer. What happens when you make a mistake when you're playing? And people are answering all these things. And he's like, he kept nodding his head, shaking his head, like, no, that doesn't happen. That's all in your head happening. But what really happened? Like, what he was getting at was pretty much nothing.
Nothing.
Right. Like, if you take away, my left hand when I'm playing, what happens to the music? Oh, okay, the bottom drops out, whatever. But like, I'm still breathing.
Yes.
And like that's when shit really gets real. Is like when you can't drink, you don't have shelter, you can't breathe. Yep. You're in danger. Like, this is all stuff we do for fun and enjoyment. And we blow it up in our minds to be the most important thing, that, oh my God, I made a mistake, or I missed this fill. And it just doesn't matter the way we think it matters.
Right. We've all talked about, you guys know who Bobby Rock is, right?
Yeah.
Encyclopedia of rock or groove. And
a great drummer, and he's really just zinned out, man. And he's ripped, big muscle guy, and really into his diet. I was watching a video of his the other day on kind of this subject matter, and he touched on something that you had said, Jeremy, where, like, what's the first thing you do? You get off stage. Sometimes you go backstage, you sit around with the band, or you sit there and you look at yourself and go, and you don't think about how good the show just was. Right. It was like, oh man, we did really good tonight, but man, on such and such a song, guys, I'm sorry, I just blew that part.
Right.
And he was talking about that, and he goes, you know what? He goes, when I make a mistake on stage, because I used to do that. And he goes, I kind of started thinking to myself, well, I've played this song. I've been on tour with this band for a year, and I've played this song 80 times this year in front of big crowds, under the pressure, doing my job. I've never made the mistake. I never made that mistake. And tonight I did. It doesn't matter. Let it go, because guess what? If you sit there and you think about it and you're like, oh my God, well, tomorrow night you're going to compound upon it and it's going to get bigger. But if you just let it go and you recognize it for what it was, it's like, oop, I dropped my pen, big deal. It's over. It's, you pick up the pen, you go about your day.
Let it go.
Right. Well, so you have to stay present. That's really it. The past is irrelevant. The past is gone. The future is unknown. We're not there yet. Just stay in the moment and just relax and breathe and enjoy the moment.
Well, and think about this too. Let's say you just play a show and it was great, but you had a couple of clams in there. And after the show, everyone's riding high. You're pumped from the adrenaline, all this, energy. And you're like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I blew that fill. And everyone's like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're just bringing the vibe down and you're ruining what's 99.9% an amazing positive experience with this 0.1% of tripping. That's because you missed some little thing that nobody even noticed. Right.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I tell this to my students all the time. I say, if you make a mistake, 99% of the people in the audience won't know.
That's right.
And if you're Eric Clapton and you make a mistake, you make that mistake 3 more times on purpose, and everybody goes nuts.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Then you're an innovator.
Exactly.
Right. Herbie Hancock talked about that, and Miles. Miles was playing with Herbie, or Herbie with Miles, I forget. And one of them, played something out. It was Herbie. Herbie played with Miles's band, and he played something, and he was like mortified. He's like, oh my God, I can't believe I just played that wrong chord, And Miles looked at him, he said, play that again.
Yeah, if you play it wrong once, you do it a second time, it's not a mistake.
Once it's a mistake, wrong, second time it's creative. Exactly.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
This all brings up if you make a mistake and you start dwelling on it and you're going to focus on it, then it's going to be, and start talking about it. Well, all the people in the band are going to recognize it where they weren't even thinking about it before. What you're doing is you're actually giving that mistake energy. You're giving that mistake some power. You're putting this damn mistake up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And if you're in a band that does that to each other, maybe get out of that band, because
I'm with you, man. I'm totally with you. Yeah, I used to play in that band, and I quit the band for that same very reason.
Yep, exactly.
I remember you talking about that, Jeremy. Where in the book, right?
Right.
I mean, and,
it's just an ego trip, if you think about it.
It is.
Now, and there is a difference between that and not knowing your parts. I mean, let's be clear about that too, because we've all been in the band where somebody has night after night, rehearsal after rehearsal, gig after gig, session after session. They have an excuse for why they can't do their parts, whatever the excuse is. And there's a big difference between not knowing your stuff and making a mistake, and that in and of itself is a whole show on itself. But back to the imposter syndrome thing, I think I have a question. Let me steer it back towards this with the imposter syndrome. Comparison. Okay, we've all, that's how this started, talking about comparing ourselves to other people. How do you not compare yourself? How do you walk away from not even playing a gig? You go see a gig. Okay. You go see Kenny Werner. We're all drummers. We go see Kenny Werner, piano player. We see his clinic. How do we not compare? How do we walk away and not go, gosh, my clinic isn't even close to that? How do we not do that?
I have a little bit of an instinct. Oh, go ahead, Chip, and then I'll go.
No, go ahead, Rick.
Well, I have a little insight in that, being that my brother-in-law is Gene Hoglan.
There you go. Thank you, Rick. I'm glad you said that.
One of the greatest drummers in the world. If you might not like extreme metal, but if you haven't seen him, just check out some videos. You know, if you Google him, you're going to see living legend, metal drummer. You know, he's played clinics with all of the top drummers in the world. I mean, and he knows everyone, and kind of just getting to know him and humanizing him, realizing that he's just a dude like all of us. He's just a
well, remember what Bissonette said? Remember what Bissonette said? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
that's the same thought, you know, when he was on the show. I introduced him and I said, Greg Bissonette, one of the greatest drummers on the planet. And he goes, I'm one of the drummers on the planet.
Right. That's right.
And when you know, I mean, you guys, you guys have all met Greg. That's who he is. And I'm sorry, Rick, I apologize. Right. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but he's just a guy.
Yeah.
He's just a dude, you know?
Yeah, that's it. He's just a dude. I'm glad you mentioned Greg, because that's, you know, and there it goes. And longevity, it's humbleness too. A guy like Greg and Gene, they're animated and fun and all, but you know, they're not flaunting their success. They're just doing what they do out of passion. And they're not trying to like show you up. They're just trying to encourage you.
Right. Chip, you had something to say?
Yeah, Chip.
Yeah, I was just going to go back to when I was an adolescent. I was getting better at drumming, and I'm on fire, and I'm reading all the modern drummers, and I'm submerged in the culture of drumming and getting better. And I got a Dave Weckl VHS tape, and I threw my sticks in the trash and walked out of the house. And I think, you know, to answer Bart's question, how do you avoid that? I think some point you're not going to avoid it. You're going to have to learn how to deal with it and take that, whatever that is that made me throw my sticks in the trash, and turn it into inspiration and go watch the tape again and start watching the tape some more and start tying what it is that I like about music that I got. If I went to go see Kenny Warner and I'm listening to the phenomenal drummer and he's just shredding on another planet, part of me is going to go, I've never been able to do that. And it's up to me how much of that part I'm going to let dominate my mind. Am I going to let that part dominate my mind, or the part of me that's going to be inspired by that person?
Yeah.
Really good point, Chip. I think, you know, my answer to Bart's question is by listening. Like, how do you stop yourself from falling into the imposter syndrome, or from, you know, tripping, comparing, all that while you're playing at least, or even while you're just listening as an audience member, is to be a good, responsible listener, to pay attention, right? And not, because all that stuff that's going through your brain, that's all self created. And you're sort of imposing that on what you're listening to.
Yeah.
And, you know,
well said.
That doesn't have to be there. You know, what you're listening to is this, or you're having this organic experience hearing a show. When you're thinking about, oh, I could do that, or I can't do that, what the drummer's doing, then you're not listening anymore. You're tripping.
Yeah.
And you know, when I'm playing, I want people listening, because I'm trying to put my heart and soul into what I'm doing. And so I want you to listen when I'm playing, and I want to be a good listener when I'm at shows, and also when I'm on the stage, I want to be a good listener. And so it's not like you say, Chip, it's not that stuff won't ever cross your mind. It will, but you have a choice about how you want to deal with it when you have those thoughts.
You have a choice.
You can decide to just run with it and be on the hamster wheel the rest of the show, and then the whole, you know, you don't even know what happened. If you go out and hear a concert, and the whole time you're tripping about how you can stack up with the drummer and the band, at the end of the show, you don't even know what happened.
Yeah, right.
You
know, how was the show? Your money. How was the show? I don't know. All I know is that I can do like this, but I can play fat paradiddles faster. But you know,
right?
Come on. I mean, what a waste of time. But and same as when you're playing. So, listen when you're in the audience, and listen when you're on stage, and then when you're paying attention to the music and you're deep into the music, all that stuff actually melts away.
Yep.
You know, and the last thing I'll say about it is that, you know, when you do have those thoughts, the choice you can make is to not feed them, like Rick was saying, to not give them fuel. And so you can be like, I just noticed that I was comparing my paradiddles to how fast that drummer was playing his paradiddles. So I noticed that, and then you let it just go. And then you get back.
Acknowledge it and let it go.
Acknowledge it and let it go. Instead,
what is that? There's a certain word for that. I don't know what it is, but you just acknowledge the thought, and you acknowledge it as a thought rather than
right.
dwelling on it.
As
Like,
rather than as a truth. Right. Well, that's like meditation, what they teach when you I'm not a big meditator, but I know that's part of the deal, is like, it's not, meditation is not the getting to the point where you're in the zone and you don't have any thoughts. No, you have the thoughts, notice the thoughts and let them go by, and then you get back to whatever, breathing,
detached from the thoughts.
Yeah, right. That's it. You are not your thoughts, right? You don't have to be your thoughts, right? Pepe Marola has made a couple of really terrific comments I want to share. Where was it? Oh, shoot.
While you're looking for that, Jeremy, there's a book that I'd recommend on the topic of what you're talking about. It's called Letting Go by David R. Hawkins.
I've heard of that book. I haven't read it, though. I've heard of it. It's good, huh?
This was my favorite one here. But when we were talking about making mistakes, he said, if there's knowledge, talent, wisdom, and creativity, there will be no mistakes. That's really, really wise. I know that Pepe doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that you didn't do something you didn't intend. That's what we call a mistake, right? But you don't think of it as a mistake. It's just something you didn't intend, but it happened, and then you do with what, everyone would be working with it and making it fine.
Check it out, though. Check it out. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Just that, when I've seen this, when Bandworks, the School of Rock and Roll program that I run, singers will be on stage and they'll hit a sour note, or say a wrong word, and they'll make a face, a really contorted, sour face when they make a mistake. And it's like, oh, all that does is alienate the audience. All that does is make everyone who's watching you feel like, ooh, you just told me I should feel bad about that note you just hit. But when you play with more seasoned players, people make mistakes, you smile, right? Oh, that's so funny.
You usually laugh it off.
Right. And then that telegraphs to the audience, this is how you handle that. We all heard it, or maybe the 2% of us that heard it, we can laugh about it.
Yes.
Yeah, and I also think at the simple terms as well is we've all kind of touched on it, but really be in the music. Remember for me, and I think I can't speak for anybody, but I think we feel this way, that the most important thing at the end of the day is the song. That's the most important thing. And I think all the musicians should be trying to serve the song and not themselves. And I think if you're really truly trying to serve the music and be a vessel for the music, I think that you're at that point, you're not so in your head that you are in the music. And then I think you can honestly look at yourself at the end of it and go, yeah, I did.
Well, that goes along with when you're watching that drummer and he's amazing, and you have the choice to get really jealous or just fly with him and go with it and enjoy it and become what a true audience member should be.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think when you're around that great player, if you just let it happen, something about their vibe becomes part of you, and you're actually you might be growing and not really even know that you're growing by being around that player. It might come out in your playing later on. So
it stretches you. Rick. Yeah, it stretches you. Very well said. Yeah, it makes really you,
really good.
You can rise to the occasion, or you can sink and drown. Maybe but yeah, you will. It stretches you, makes you better. Very well said. I like that.
Thanks, Bart. And Jeremy, I love what you talked about with making the face when you make a mistake. It's I tell my students that, and myself, all the time.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so important. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention, that comment, who was that listener, that comment? Was it Pepe?
Pepe Morella.
Pepe. I love that comment. Yeah, I love that comment about if all of these things. Yeah. If there's knowledge, talent, wisdom, creativity, then there'll be no mistakes. I totally agree with that. But then sometimes people still don't like what you're doing.
Sure.
And then Right? Like the band might not like it. They might have had a different intent in their head, or the audience is just like, oh, I don't care how good you are. I want to see the band with the dude with the cool haircut. You know? So what do you guys do with that when
That's
that
great,
happens?
Rick. That's a great thing to bring up. I mean, I think, if it happens on occasion, maybe you have a conversation about it, but if it happens consistently, well, then probably not the right fit. If Keith Moon was playing with, Johnny Cash, right? I mean,
really cool,
Folsom Prison Blues just went like that way. It's what the hell happened,
Probably not the right drummer for the gig. He's probably going to play that gig one time and one time only. Right?
Jeremy's been on fire all day. Just so you guys know, before we started the show, he was just every one of them was out of the park, man. He's on fire. Sorry.
That's right. So I mean, I think that's part of it too. And like Kelly Ray Tubbs was saying earlier about, she said something about getting feedback from people you trust about what you can do. To me, that also sort of speaks to like, who do you surround yourself with? And how important that is for your growth and related to this self-doubt and the imposter syndrome. You got to surround yourself with people who are on the same page musically and have the same attitude as you do and the right vibe. And when things like that might come up, we're like, oh, you went for something different than what I was trying to go for here. We were trying to lay it back and you were pushing, you can have a conversation about it and it's cool, and you can both learn and grow, and maybe the next show is more focused and more dialed into what, a group thing you're trying to go for. Right. But if there's all this tension and, oh man, God damn it, the drummer, every time he does that and I hate it, and the guitar player's pissed off because you're stealing his thunder or whatever, the band's going to break up. You got to have communication and you got to have trust. And if that stuff isn't there, then, you're headed down a bad path, right? It's not going to last.
Yeah. Another thing I think about when I think about the writing a book, becoming an author, going through imposter syndrome on that front, things like that, it reminds me of, what did I do to get out of it? What did I do to get through it? How did I make that change from negativity to, because I mean, let's face it, for me, it's way easier to be negative than it is to be positive. Yeah. It seems like it takes way less energy, especially in the society that I live in. Yeah. And when I look around and I see all this stuff that I'm barraged with, it's way easier to have a negative attitude. So one of the ways that I turn that around is by doing an old trick an old friend of mine taught me about, writing a gratitude list. When all hope feels lost, everything feels lost, and I don't know where to turn, I'll get out a piece of paper and I'll just intuitively start writing 10 things that I'm very grateful for, that I have in my life that are going well, that are positive, that do set me on that right path. And that's one of the things I use to get out of self-imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that's good, Chip. That's really good. Because
that's great.
It's so easy to race down the rabbit hole of self-hatred and self-loathing or whatever, I suck. And sometimes you have to stop that short with like an actual, just something that breaks you out of that routine. And even just writing down things that are working, sometimes when you look at those things on paper and it stares you back in the face and you realize, wow, I had this one thing that was a whole black hole of self, loathing or whatever, doubt. And then I've got this whole page worth of all this stuff that's going right. And I'm focusing on this, 5% of stuff that's not going right instead of the 95% of the things. Like we said this earlier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. You know what I can tell listening to you guys, what I can tell listening to you guys is that you're all amazing drum teachers, because I guarantee all of your students are going to say that you're encouraging and supportive. You help me correct my mistakes as a student, but that's the kind of teacher I strive to be for, or try to be. And those are the teachers that I've worked with too. When I worked with Zorro, we were working on halftime shuffles. And one day he said, "Man, you sound like Bernard Purdy." I know that's a stretch.
Oh, wow. Right? There you go.
I know that's a stretch, but I started believing that. Yeah. And so what happened? I started playing halftime shuffles all the time.
Yeah,
that's like celebrating the victory.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'm so glad you told that story, Rick, which is a beautiful story,
too.
by the way. And you do sound like a badass when you play those halftime shuffles.
Dude, Rick can shuffle like crazy.
You, as an educator, you have to remember how important your words are. And what kind of impact that they have with your students, especially the young ones, but even the adults, right? You don't realize, because they look up to you, they respect you, they see you as the person who knows, the fountain of knowledge, the fountain of wisdom, the experience. And when you give them compliments, man, that can just like, that can send them on their way. Yeah, right. I know we've all had this experience. I played a show one time, a private party for the great Alan Toussaint, New Orleans piano player and producer. And he came up to me after the set and he told me how he just felt like I really got the pocket really good. And like, it was a train beat. And I was like, oh my God. I went from there on. I was like flying on train beats. I was like, Alan Toussaint said I'm putting a train beat.
That's great.
And just those words matter so much, man. And when the positivity creates more positivity and more progress and more feelings of self-worth, and the negativity, you got to be really thoughtful about how you say things that are constructively critical, right? Because of course that's our job too. We got to be real and say, well, that wasn't quite exactly right, or your timing's a little off. But it's one thing to say, you just want to couch all that stuff in positive language, instead of saying no and don't and bad and wrong, you say, almost, good try, here's how it goes, do it like this instead of don't do it like
sandwich,
that. Compliment sandwich, right? Using positive coaching language. Yeah, it's a lot.
That's
one of the things that, go ahead, Chip.
I was just going to say a good friend of mine, one of the best teachers I know, Carl Cherry, he was helping me with a student I had some trouble with, and he kept explaining, he said, you got to remember to celebrate the victory. When they do something good, you've got to make a fuss about it and bring that positive energy to that reward of having that self-esteem and that pride of themselves, and that confidence just starts building up, and it can feed on itself. Another, to get out of imposter syndrome, compliment people. When you see somebody doing something good, for you to compliment people brings your spirits up as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very well said. Yeah. True. And I think again, it comes back to, we've said it 100 times today, just getting outside of your head. And then, and like Kelly said, having somebody that you trust. I remember years ago, very first time I worked with like a real producer, like a real, this guy's got a track record producer. I was studying with Ralph Humphreys at the time, and I was getting ready to go in the studio. I was petrified. And he just said to me, he goes, everybody makes mistakes. Just go in there and do the best you can. And again, sometimes the simplest things, when you hear somebody like Ralph Humphrey, we all make mistakes. Just go in there and do your job. It makes it simplifies it, it simplifies it, and it gives you that, maybe that little edge that you need. I have to say this, and I don't want to just talk about stuff that I'm doing, but I had just recently, I was asked to do a video and send it in for Sabian, and I just sent it in last week, and it was, very specific things that they wanted. But you could do whatever you wanted, but it had to fit within these parameters. And okay, well, what do I play? What do I, what do I do? These going to be some amazing drummers. And so I actually thought of Rick. You know what? I'm going to play a shuffle. I'm just going to play a shuffle. So I played a halftime shuffle. I ended up playing a halftime thing, and I filmed it, and I did. I had to just, I watched it a few times. I recorded it and I listened back, and I'm like, you know what? It's good. I'm just going to let it go. I'm not going to sit here and send it out to all my drummer friends and go, what do you think? Is this, I'm just going to, you know what? I'm going to trust and I'm going to put it out there in the universe, and I'm just going to let go and let God. I'm just
Cool,
going to
man.
let it happen. And that's what I and I did. Rick, you were a big inspiration on that part.
Oh my God, Bart, that's fantastic. I'm sure it's going to be ridiculously crazy. And Bart, you're just on fire these days. I know you're going to be featured on the Sabian Education Network.
Yeah, I'm going to be on Dom's show. Yeah, that's going to be
very
fun.
cool.
That's exciting, man. That's great.
Yeah.
And I know you were on Drum Education Live in London.
Yeah. I was on that last week. Sierra and Felipe.
Sierra.
Oh man, they were great, man. That was so much fun.
You know, this kind of reminds me too that in drumming and in life, like all of this stuff really applies to life, not just drumming.
Yep.
You know, all of our responses that we have to our drums, you know, we need to carry that positive stuff over into our relationships, you know, with our boyfriends, girlfriends, wives, husbands, you know, our full family members, for our full community, because it's really important to be a little bright array of sunshine in this world.
Right.
And I want to go ahead, Jeremy.
Just to recap, to connect some of the things we said to what Rick just said: be a good listener, be a good communicator. You know, celebrate positive victories, like Chip said. All those things are important in life, not just in playing drums.
Right. And I think that, you know, you just took the word out of my mouth. I was just going to say, I think we also need to be patient, and we need to, I think, well, like what we're doing right here, Drummers Education Connection, this was born out of all the bad stuff, right? COVID had started and nobody's working and we don't know what to do. And Chip started making phone calls, and here we are. What episode are we on today? What is it?
64.
64. So episode 64, and it's turned into a positive, and it could have been really easy to have imposter syndrome about it. I think it could have been really easy to be, well, you know, we're 4 drummers and we teach, and that's great. It's never going to work. I'm just going to spend my time doing something else. And I tell you what, this has been, the Drummers Education Connection has been one of the most positive things for myself personally. And I have learned so much from the 3 of you guys. And
likewise.
And so I think stuff, just things like that, you know, it's a positive thing, and that's a way to get out of imposter syndrome.
Focus on the positivity.
Right.
Focus on the positive and let it go. Let the bad stuff go.
Yeah.
I get by with a little help from my friends. Now
we know why. Now we know why we're drum teachers and not voice coaches. Hey, you don't want to hear me sing. I'm not going to.
Well, at least we don't have to worry about us. They're taking the video down because of copyright issues with that, because no one will recognize that song.
I know exactly.
What song? What song? We didn't sing this song.
One that Rick just sang. Yeah.
Rick didn't say anything. He played an electric pad that sounded like a bongo. That's what I heard. Play that thing again, Rick. Come on. We got bongos. We got timbales. We got timbales and tamales, man. That was awesome.
Man, I can't wait till COVID is over, because I want to take some in-person lessons with the 3 of you guys.
I do too.
Me too.
I think all of us should go to Rick's studio in San Diego and just sit there for 8 hours and make noise and just have a kick in the pants, man.
We're gonna do
that'd
it.
be so much fun.
We'll do some deck broadcasts from Rick's studio, where we're all talking about drums and playing and talking and teaching each other and learning from each other.
That sounds like a killer idea.
I think it's a great idea, man.
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been, I got to kind of second what Jeremy said. I think this is a very important episode. I think it's easy to get caught up in what you do as this big thing, but I think that because this, imposter syndrome carries into all walks of life, I mean, we all have self-doubt. And I think learning to deal with that is It's something that every person has to go through at every age, every walk of life, no matter where you are. And so I think this was an important episode. So thank you everybody for watching. Next week, we're not sure what we're doing yet. We got a bunch of balls up in the air right now. We're trying to figure out. The week after that, though, we've got the great Tony Pia. Tony is an amazing guy. I took some lessons with him a few years ago. He's played with the Doobie Brothers. He's played with Brian Setzer Orchestra. He's played with Maynard Ferguson, and he is awesome. I can't wait to have Tony on. He's going to be on in 2 weeks. Looking forward to having him on. We have a whole bunch of new stuff coming up on deck. We have the new deck website. Jeremy, what's the website? Tell everybody about the website real quick.
Yeah, boy, I should have mentioned that at the beginning. We have a brand new website. It's www.drummersedcon.com. So that's drummers, EDCON, short for Drummers Education Connection.com. And it's gorgeous. It's killer. Really, my wife, Michelle, designed it. She's a graphic designer, and she just knocked it out of the park.
She really did.
Check it out. We got lots of resources on there. More stuff can be coming soon. And thanks you guys for tuning in, and this was a great episode. I think one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah. Yes. Good stuff. Yes. Thanks everybody for watching, and to Rick, to Germany, and to Chip, thank you guys for being the best yous. I've learned so much from you. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
All
Thanks
right.
for watching, guys.
See you next week. Thanks everybody.
We'll see you next week on the deck, guys. Have a great week.